look at your comments, whether the orientation of this is correct this time. Is it horizontal? Because we were having so much trouble last time and people were telling me I was sideways and things like that. Everything good? Anyone? Anyone? I'm going to assume things are good. Okay. So welcome to another episode of Keto Baking School. I'm Carolyn Ketchum, the author, crazy mastermind behind All Day I Dream About Food, and we're going to talk the difference between metal and ceramic or other materials of bakeware. So to illustrate my point, I have, putting on my gloves because they're still hot, I have 2 pans of brownies. Hi from Kentucky. I promise I'll take questions after too. So I have 2 pans of brownies. I don't have 2 pounds of brownies. That would be bad. Well, that would be good. Anyway, I have one baked in my fabulous USA metal bakeware, and I just took these out of the oven, and I have one baked in ceramic, same size. Everything about these is the same. I hope this is gonna work. Let me show you here for a second. Okay, hopefully it doesn't fall out. I'm gonna shake this. You don't really see any jiggle. They look pretty firm, but not overcooked. They smell good. This one, hopefully you can see this. The center is very wobbly and it's about to basically, look, it's liquid underneath. We're gonna get a little, it's like lava cake right there. Look, it's coming apart before it gets all over my counter. Anyway, so that's my little illustration, and I'm gonna let these continue to cool and then we're gonna try to cut into them. However, let's talk about the science because I kind of love that stuff. And when I was writing The Ultimate Guide to Keto Baking, I started to investigate this because I had always noticed, say when you go away, like often when I go away, I create kind of a dry mix of one of my recipes. So brownies. Let's go with brownies. And I try to cook it. And often in these sort of Airbnbs or VRBOs or whatever, they often have glass cookware because people can't scratch the heck out of it like you can out of nice, good, nonstick. Metal. And so I started to notice, and this had been, sometimes people would say to me, these brownies aren't cooking through or whatever. And I wasn't thinking it through. I didn't kind of realize the difference. And I started to notice it myself. This is a long time ago now. And so when I was researching for the Ultimate Guide to Keto Baking, I wanted to find out exactly how it worked and what difference it made. So I did a lot of reading, but I also did a lot of testing in different kinds of materials. So metal is almost always preferred, particularly light colored metal. This is cooling down a lot more, so it's not too hot. It's still hot. Light colored metal is going to transfer heat quickly and efficiently and evenly throughout the pan. So every side from the dry heat is getting the same amount of heat, and it's transferring that heat to your batter quickly, helping it rise, helping it cook through. This one's still a lot hotter. Things like glass and ceramic and stoneware, but we'll talk about stoneware a little differently in a second. First of all, one of the problems with things like ceramic is you don't have straight sides. You always have a curve to the bottom. And I'll show you also, I don't have a square glass pan, but I have this one, and you can see the edges flare out a little bit and they're always going to have that curve at the bottom. So you don't get nice straight edge brownies either. But it tends to not conduct heat efficiently. So it takes a long time to heat up, but once it does, it holds on to that heat so that things keep cooking, and sometimes the outside of whatever you're cooking gets very dry and overcooked while the inside is still liquid. So I started to do a lot of research on this. I found that for keto baking, one of the best things to do when you're switching from metal to glass or ceramic is to lower the temperature by 25 degrees or so, and then just bake it longer so that it allows the glass or ceramic to heat up more slowly and then to disperse the heat more evenly and take a little longer time cooking. So this, as you can see, it's not too hot anymore, is literally uncooked in the center. And I did everything the same. My husband can attest. I was measuring everything out exactly the same. I whisked them up at around the same time. I put them into the oven at exactly the same time. I even greased them with the same thing, and I took them out of the oven at exactly the same time. So everything about these is the same, except what they're baked in. So you really have to make adjustments for any material that you're using. And light colored metal is the most preferred, particularly if it's like a USA pan. It has a nice, good nonstick coating that is also non-toxic. We want that, right? So that's preferred for most baked things. And what I find, and this is my preference for writing, is I don't specify metal, but I do specify if I expect you to use glass or ceramic. Because so a pie plate, I prefer, almond flour can have a tendency to burn when it's so thinly spread out in a pie. So I don't use metal pie plates. I only use glass pie plates, so, or ceramic. I actually have a couple of those too. So I always specify. If it's not specified, assume metal. Unless there's pictures in the, you're following somebody else's blog and there's pictures in there and they're clearly using a ceramic dish, then maybe you might want to go with ceramic. But it's really a smart move to assume metal unless it says otherwise, or unless it says baking dish, which tends to refer to glass or ceramic. Confusing, I know. But if you're wondering why some of your baked goods aren't cooking through the same way someone like me, you say, oh, that's like a perfect looking brownie. Well, why isn't mine cooking through? Why did it take so much longer? Why are the edges so dry? You may have used a different material than I used. So look for those clues if you can find them. I am starting now, when I write my recipes, to say metal, because I want it to be really clear and I want you to have success. Okay, let's talk. Glass essentially works the same way as ceramic. So you're gonna have the same problems. And stoneware. I do not own any stoneware for baking. It looks beautiful and there's some really good stuff out there. So I did a little reading and I went to one of my favorite resources, which is King Arthur Baking. And I read up on stoneware, and I have actually linked in this video description, I have linked to their site where they talk about how stoneware bakes, and they did brownies and breads in metal, glass, and ceramic. And the glass was hands down the one that just didn't work nearly as well. The metal worked nicely. The stoneware, I'm sorry, I keep saying ceramic and stoneware. Stoneware, which is very different from ceramic, they made a point, for one thing, that it depends on how it's made. Stoneware, some people do pottery. Stoneware is clay. So some people do pottery and they have this beautiful baking dish and you want to bake in it, but it heats unevenly because it's hand thrown and it has air bubbles. If it's something like Pampered Chef, or I'm trying to think other good stoneware brands, I don't really know them because I don't own any. If they're really well made and evenly made, they tend to actually cook like, or bake like, metal, apparently. Their loaf, of course, this is real bread, or maybe it's quick bread, I can't remember. It's not keto stuff, so they're not baking with keto ingredients, but their bread actually fared the best in a beautiful stoneware pan. It rose nicely, had an even crust, it was beautiful. So I've linked to that resource if you want to read about stoneware, but I think the assumption is that stoneware works mostly the same way as metal. And then glass and ceramic, you need to make some serious adjustments by dropping the temperature and expecting it to cook longer. You can see my lava brownies. That's not so bad. I'm just gonna eat it and put ice cream on it tonight. Okay, final thing that a lot of people love, and I love it too, but I don't love it for certain things. I don't have a 8x8 silicone, but this is just my example. This silicone pan, which I guess you could cook brownies in. Those would be pretty big brownies. So this guy does not really conduct heat at all, which for many things, great. I love, in particular, my muffin cups, because I get really even color all over my muffin, and it's super easy to get them out of the muffin pan, and I am not wasting parchment paper. So these can be used. Sometimes the muffins, depending on how they're made, they're so clean, they're literally like, I don't even have to wash this. There's like nothing on it when they come out. So I really like those. I did have, a lot of people say, so one of the trickiest pans that everybody agrees on is bundt pans, right? Because they have, you know, crevices and shapes, and they really can be tricky to get things out of them. And so everybody's like, oh, why don't you use a silicone bundt pan? Well, I did once, and it was one of those really cool swirl ones that had like the edges, you know, kind of coming down. It was beautiful. And my cake in the main part was fine, but all of those edges were dark brown. So they were just too exposed, I guess. But it takes a lot longer to cook with silicone, to bake through with silicone, because it just doesn't transfer heat properly if it's your only pan. When I'm using these, they're inside a metal pan, so some of that heat still transfers. So I'm not a huge fan of other kinds of silicone pans. I own tons and tons of silicone, but it's mostly for molds, for like, you know, chocolate things and yummy stuff. Oh, but I also linked to, can't remember whose article I linked to on silicone. Somebody did an experiment, and it was pretty cool. They tested the same recipe in metal and silicone, and they found that the other thing about silicone was that because it doesn't transfer heat, it doesn't encourage rising as much. So things were more dense. They made exactly the same cake or bread. I have linked to it in the description of this video, so I highly recommend looking at that. And so things were more dense. It just didn't kind of transfer the heat as well. So thought that was pretty interesting. Now, let's see what happens when I cut into these. So I'm gonna use my bench knife, and I'm gonna use my metal one first. I'm assuming this is like my test control brownies. I love the little edges of, ooh. Okay, and can we get them out of the pan is the question. So we're gonna go for a centerpiece, because that's where you have the most trouble. Now they still are pretty warm, so it's gonna be a little tricky regardless of how I do this. I was trying to do it perfectly so that they were still, I could show you how liquidy the one in the ceramic pan was, because, you know, it comes right out of the oven and it's super liquidy. So let me get one of my side brownies out of the way. I'm gonna have a lot of like messy brownies. You know what I'm gonna make with them? Truffles. I'm gonna make some brownie truffles for the holiday, or for Thanksgiving. Valentine's Day. What time of year is it? Okay, getting out a centerpiece brownie from the metal pan. It's gooey still, but it holds together. Okay, so that is my perfect brownie, where I took it out a little bit early and it's kind of gooey and almost fudgy. Okay, this is gonna be interesting. I think what I really need is a spoon for this one. Let's try to get a centerpiece brownie. I need to get off all my brownie. They're cooked, so I'm not worried about raw eggs. Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm not gonna be able, I'm gonna have to do this with a spoon. Like, let me show you. First of all, look how much brownie batter is stuck. That's me trying to cut through the middle. And then, like, this is not gonna work. I'll try. Let's see. Oh, it's gonna be a disaster. I'm gonna get stuff all over my counter. Just trying to, okay. That is the center brownie from the ceramic pan. It's gonna taste really good. And you know what you could do, I could just put these back in the oven for a little bit. My oven tends to keep its heat for a while, so I might just stick, but I might just eat it with ice cream. It's like a lava brownie. I kind of like that. So I guess it depends on your preference for brownies, huh? Okay, I'm gonna open it up to questions. I'm also going to, as always, give myself a little plug for the Ultimate Guide to Keto Baking, because I do talk about this in here. I didn't talk about Stoneware because I just, you know, had already done so much research, and this thing is long and thick and big and tons of information. I also highly recommend reading the links that I gave for King Arthur flour, and I can't why am I drawing a blank on what the other one was? But I put it in there to discuss silicone so that you have an understanding of how to adjust your recipes. They're obviously baking with normal, conventional ingredients. There's nothing abnormal about keto, people. But they're baking with conventional ingredients, which has a lot of gluten and sugar and changes everything. But some of the things still apply, and for the most part, how you bake in different pans applies. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Or just want to say hi? Putting on the glasses? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, I love my Ninja Creamy. Okay. Yeah, I like vanilla ice cream. You have that cookbook and you love it. Great, I'm so glad. That's wonderful. Thank you. It's funny, I always look in this direction and my camera's over here. Hey, the Ennis Foster family. Hey. Does anybody want to eat a really gooey brownie? Gosh, I wish you guys were here because now I've got brownies galore. Yes, love USA pans. And I will probably do another giveaway for these at some point because hands down the best. They don't pay me or anything. I wish they did. No, I promote their product so much. Love my kitchen. Thank you. Yes, I love lava cakes too. This isn't intended as a lava cake. So like, say you're baking for a family get together or something and you are, suddenly you're like, oh, I put it in ceramic and now I've got lava cake. You can just, oh, fine cooking. Yes, thank you. It was fine cooking for the silicone. Change the texture of almond flour. Well, I think you must not be using the right almond flour. I have linked to the recipe on this website. So I saw the thing about almond flour. I'm going to try to talk about that. We're going to do one soon where I show you differences in almond flour, and not only that, but differences in how they weigh out. Because I was experimenting recently, scooping a cup of almond flour and then from one brand and scooping a cup of almond flour from another, and it was just very interesting when I weighed them. But if you are finding your almond flour to be gritty, it's probably not finely ground enough. I love Bob's Red Mill and I love King Arthur flour. Yes, the brownie website is on my site. It's called The Ultimate Brownies or The Ultimate Chewy Keto Brownies or something like that. It was the 365 brand from, what's their names? Whole Foods. And it was very gritty. I made cookies that I'd made before and we were down at a place, we were on a vacation and I made the same cookies I've made many, many times. And you could see, and it seemed finely ground, so it can be very deceptive coming out of the bag, but there's a huge difference and you see it when you bake. When you can see the granules after you bake, you need a different almond flour. Okay, I know there were other questions. I wish that I could answer everything right here, but it's really hard. It moves so fast and your questions disappear off the screen really, really quickly. So if you had a question that I didn't answer, particularly about these brownies and baking with different bakeware, look for the video to post as a normal video and then ask your question there as a comment, because otherwise I'm probably going to miss it. The chat, it's so hard to find the chat afterwards too. So I hope that was informative. And now I got some brownies to eat and some truffles to make, or I'm just going to put ice cream on it. It's going to be so good. Look how good, this is crazy. It's uncooked basically in the middle. So if you like uncooked, it is actually cooked. It's just not cooked enough. So I'm going to end up putting that back in the oven for a little bit. So it's probably cooked enough that the eggs are safe, but not cooked enough that you can actually hand somebody a brownie. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Whereas my brownie, it's a little bit soft still because it's still warm, but this is my brownie from the metal pan. So I hope that was informative. And now you have one more tool in your toolkit to understand why something didn't work or that kind of thing. So, and to make really good keto desserts or other baked goods. Okay. I will talk to you guys later and we'll do this again in a couple weeks. Bye. Well, I got to figure out how to end it. I never quite figure it out. I think that's it.